So, despite dozens upon dozens of movie tie-in franchises to Indiana Jones, Godzilla, Harry Potter, Terminator, Ghostbusters, which did not have as many games as I thought it did, Jurassic Park, and there's really 10 High School Musical games? Seriously? But just about every animated movie gets some sort of game tie-in. And here's the weird one. Games based off of movies that came out a long time ago. War Games, DEFCON 1. War Games was one of Matthew Broderick's earliest films, way back in the early 80s. And there was a PlayStation 1 game that came out based off of, about the computer gone mad and starting World War III. And then you have Fight Club, which came out years before, and then suddenly here's this online fighting game for the Xbox. And the Evil Dead series made a comeback on several consoles with several iterations. And it wasn't just a new thing either. Dirty Harry came out for the NES like 3 or 4 years after the last Dirty Harry movie. And there's others I could mention. There's been a couple of James Bond movie games. The Thing, The Warriors, which is actually fairly decent for all things considered. And Mike was mentioning earlier that there's a quasi-sequel in the works for the 2009 Star Trek movie.
Mm-hmm. Still being made.
Which is technically kind of a in-betweener between the 2009 movie and the 2013 Star Trek in the Darkness movie. Now here's one I did not know about until I was researching all of this. The TurboGrafx 16 release of Blazing Lasers, which was a really highly acclaimed shooter for its era, and it actually sold a lot of the TurboGrafx 16 because it was pretty much a launch title for it. But it was actually based on the movie Gunhead, of which the Japanese counterpart actually shares the name. But when they brought it over here, they removed all the references to it. A lot of people's probably seen Gunhead. They actually ran it on Sci-Fi Channel a couple of times, so I know there's a few of you out there that might have.
I want to mention a couple games, but I kind of don't want to because we're going to be mentioning them next week. I'm just going to say them. I don't really want to talk about them now because we're going to do it next week. Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Jaws, Tremors. But yeah, enough of that stuff. Let's look at something else now. Otherwise, we're going to ruin next week's one by talking about it this week. A game that everybody said was horrible, but I loved. And they intentionally made this game horrible. The game was just hilariously stupid. Was Wayne's World.
Yes.
I love that game.
Didn't they have a Bill and Ted's game also?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
And man, I got footage of all of these that you guys are talking about.
Wayne's World is hilarious and also stupid hard.
Yes.
Stupid hard. I think the game is Ninja Gaiden hard.
Your character fills up like a quarter of the screen.
It's because their head is 10 times larger than their body.
I didn't really play, most of the other stuff I avoided like the plague.
You played a lot of the Lord of the Rings games.
That is true.
Now, the Fellowship of the Ring, I've never actually touched. I haven't heard particularly good things about it.
I
Hobbit,
actually never played any of the Lord of the Ring games.
I've heard Hobbit is kind of Super Mario-esque, and then the Third Age was kind of a very dull RPG. But the Two Towers and Return of the King are respected among a lot of game players.
They're my two favorites. I didn't play the other ones that you mentioned. I think I may have played The Hobbit. I didn't care much for it. But the Two Towers and Return of the King, I actually sold both of those when I got rid of my old Xbox because they weren't playing very well on the 360. Well, those problems ended up getting fixed, years and years down the line. And here about, 2 or 3 months ago, I went to Vintage Stock and repurchased Return of the King. I had a lot of fun playing through it again. It hasn't lost its charm with its age. If you like Lord of the Rings and you just want to go through and kill stuff like a beat 'em up style game, it's a pretty good game to get.
It's a pretty good hack and slasher.
Mm-hmm.
And it is one of those type that goes a little beyond just mashing one button all the way through the game. It takes its time leveling up characters and allowing you different moves.
Aliens is a good game. Aliens
Actually,
3 for
which
Super
one?
Nintendo. Aliens 3
RoboCop.
for the Super Nintendo.
Yep.
Wasn't there an Aliens versus RoboCop game?
Terminator.
Terminator, that's what it was.
Mm-hmm. There's also an Alien vs Predator game too.
Several of them. The Capcom one was actually supposed to be, so I've heard, the theoretical original script to an Aliens vs Predator movie, which would have been a whole lot better than the one that was actually made.
I just remembered that Aliens 3 was, I'm going to say, most of them, they put a little bit of time into a game and that's it. Aliens 3 was a fantastic game. I just remember it wasn't too hard. It was just, it was kind of hard, but it was just a blast. if you guys played it.
I played the Super Nintendo one back in the day as a rental, but it hasn't been until I was getting footage for this week's show and I was playing the NES version, which did not play so well.
Yeah, the SNES. That's the one.
Here's another one. Terminator 2 Judgment Day.
Now, is that the arcade game?
There wasn't. It was both. There was an arcade game that you had the little gun and you would just kind of aim it at the screen. But they released that same game on the Super Nintendo
and the Genesis and the Sega
Genesis.
CD, I believe, and the Game Boy. But see, there is a Terminator 2: The Judgment Day.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's why I wanted to
3DO.
make sure. Oh, 3DO, yes, that was probably the arcade perfect version.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that was the arcade version, I had that, and my brother and I wasted so much time playing that game. We ended up beating it eventually, but it was a hard game because it was designed to be a quarter waster.
And a lot of those don't translate too well when they try to keep that same difficulty to a game where usually they limit your continues to like 3.
Yeah, it was about 2 or 3. And then I'm gonna say this one because I know it's not strictly based off the movie, but I love the game anyway. It was based off of both the manga and the movie, and that was Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game. I love that game. I played that game over and over and over. I maxed out 2 or 3 different characters to the max level and beat the game with them.
It's one of those games I kind of regret not having yet.
I never played it, unfortunately.
Well, it's
It's a lot like River
360
City Ransom.
only, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think so. I
even think
didn't
the
bother
PSN
looking
got it.
for it. I didn't look for it on the PSN because I had a 360 and I had more controllers for that so I could play with friends.
I did download the demo for it, and I did play it quite a bit. They got some DLC for it that added a couple of new characters and some actual multiplayer. You can play multiplayer online now, which adds a lot of life to it, though I don't know why it took them so many years to add something that should have been in there from the start, but it could have been the next Castle Crashers if they had.
Yeah.
Probably too little too late now.
Ooh, here's one that it ain't really a movie, but it's based off a movie series. The Chronicle of Riddick's Butcher Bay. Fantastic game.
Yes, there's a lot of people that really went nuts for that when it first came out on the Xbox, I believe.
Yes.
And it was so good they did a remake of the game. The game itself is a movie. It's unusually crazy as much as people hated Chronicle of Riddick's third movie. Did they ever make a movie after the third one? I don't think.
There's technically 3 if you count Pitch Black.
Yeah, Pitch Black. They had an
third?
anime movie.
Oh,
And
okay.
then the third one was with the undead people or whatever they're called. I don't know.
I was forgetting the animated one. I understand.
Conan.
And a few Conan games. Now, how many of them are actually tied to the movies? Like the NES one, I think it was more tied to the comic book than it was the actual Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Well, okay. Age of Conan had Arnold Schwarzenegger being used in it.
I did not know
Like
that.
they had digitally restructured him digitally, and he was in the game. I don't think he voiced it, but they used his likeness, if I remember correctly. Did you mention Batman Forever?
No, we didn't.
Oh, well, that's an odd one to talk about, because I know there's a few people out there that actually enjoyed that. Now, Batman Returns, I love that one. Back in the day, I played
That's
that
a
one.
good one.
But Batman Forever was like a take on making Batman into an Mortal Kombat character, which is really ironic considering what's coming out next year. Injustice.
Yeah, I have some people that I work with that are excited about that game, and I learned from Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe, so...
Well, this is
I'll
using
wait.
more of the more recent Mortal Kombat engine, which was actually decent. You know me in fighting games, even if it's bad, I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, Batman was not the only one. Now, Batman Forever was not a fighting game. It had a fighting game component in it. It wasn't good at all, but it was largely kind of like Mortal Kombat Mythologies, where you went through the events of the movie. But there was a lot of weird control issues, and you basically controlled like you were playing a fighting game. But it wasn't the only one to do the Mortal Kombat route. So here's one of those rare, weird situations. Street Fighter. Everybody knows Street Fighter. Everybody loves Street Fighter, so they had to make a Street Fighter movie. Completely went off the rails of anything really Street Fighter resemblance. And then they take the Street Fighter movie and turn it back into a fighting game again. So there's Street Fighter, the movie, starring most of the people that were actually in the movie. A matter of fact, Raul Julia actually played his part as that was one of the last things he did. He was doing the motion capture green screen stuff for that game. So most of the people are in that are famous actors in one form or the other. And I don't know, it's There's actually two versions, and oddly enough, even the screen captures are a little different, it seems to me, between the two versions. There's the arcade, and then there's the home versions. And there's actually some different characters in both of them because of that. And I went on that tangent for no particular reason. It wasn't the only fighting game that came out of the movie, because we also have X-Men Mutant Academy, which, quite frankly, the X-Men have had a lot of games that had nothing to do with any of their movies. X-Men Trilogy, and even the Wolverine game I've heard is actually very, very good, which kind of blows my mind considering how very, very bad the movie was. But yeah, Mutant Academy even had the extra ability to unlock the movie costumes.
I was pretty sure that you started with the movie costumes and you unlocked the classic ones.
That very well could be. And you mentioned an MMO based on a movie. There was also that whole Matrix thing. That, you know, it was just this little movie trilogy back a couple of years ago. Has not had a lot of success in the gaming department.
No, it hasn't.
The MMO lasted a lot longer than I thought it did. I thought it was basically something that shut down within a year, but it lasted quite a few years apparently. And it had probably one of the biggest tie-in games ever to be made, called Enter the Matrix, which actually they went and filmed themselves entire sequences that tied into the second movie directly. It was a canon movie to the point that you could add in some of the scenes from the game into the actual movie and still make sense. Sadly, there was a lot of rushed situations and the game was exceedingly buggy.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was pretty bad. I remember having to restart entire levels at the end of the level because the game would glitch out and freeze, or I would get stuck and wouldn't be able to undo that.
Specifically that Agent Smith chase scene, where they're all coming out from everywhere and you're trying to climb up ladders on top of rooftops and such, and there was a lot of potential for glitching there because just about every ladder had this point that if you didn't hit it just right, you'd get stuck on. That was kind of sad. And then there was also the Neo game, which I have not played. I don't know.
No, I didn't. After all the glitches and stuff in Enter the Matrix, I didn't give another Matrix game a shot.
It was made by the same people, too. I didn't know that. Atari and Shiny Entertainment. You know Shiny. They're the guys that made Earthworm Jim. But okay, we put this off long enough, and we're nearing the end of our show, so I have to mention it. Star Wars.
Oh, yes.
The first movie was back in 1977, and as far as I know, the first game was 1982 for the Atari 2600's Empire Strikes Back.
I own that.
With the classic arcade game actually being 1983. I thought it was older. And they have hit every single genre you'd possibly think of. From action, adventure, first-person shooters, real-time strategy, role-playing games, to MMOs, fighting games, and even chess. Yes, show that wonderful chess footage. And even crossovers with not only Lego, which was a hugely successful franchise, but also appeared as two characters in the Soul Calibur series in Soul Calibur 4.
I just fondly remember Knights of the Old Republic. I played those games so much.
It was very, very good. Matter of fact, one of the times I was visiting Mike many, many years ago, that game had me hooked. I don't think I was out there but like 3 days, and I still put like 20 hours in it.
I played that game a lot.
Then I finally got a copy of my own for the PC, and started it, and it was one of those moments of, this is too familiar, maybe I should come back to this one. You know, I'm a little less, when I feel like I really want to play it again, I never got back to it until I came across a computer that didn't like it anymore.
It's also one
Vista.
The first Knights of the Old Republic has a rare situation where the console version is better than the PC version. In the PC version, your level was capped at 20, and it was hard capped. There was no way to get around it. And it really nerfed you. The second one, which is a horrible, buggy nightmare, you could become godlike in. You would just become unstoppable. If I remember correctly, they cut 75% of the game.
From what?
They just ran out of time, I guess. They told them, we need more time, and they're like, no, release it. And they had to cut 75% of the game.
I hadn't heard that.
It was supposed to be multi-ending. I mean, it already was multi-ending, but way more endings. You're supposed to be able to fall in love with every character, kill every character that was on your party. There was entire planets that they deleted.
I do know about one of those. I guess it was a lot less than what I was expecting it to be. That's the one I didn't play.
Oh, you didn't play the second one?
No.
No, I didn't either.
Strangely enough, I wasn't even interested in it, and it's not because BioWare didn't do it and Obsidian Entertainment did. It was just, I wanted to finish the first one first before I got into it.
And you never did.
It's kind of the Mass Effect syndrome.
I had the weird situation of I played the second one first and then played the first one after that.
It probably doesn't make that big of a difference aside from spoiling the ending of the first one for you.
Yeah, not really.